You're now listening to The Sound of Sanity. This sound will continue for the duration of the program. Hey everybody, welcome to Sound of Sanity Mock Quarantine. This is like the quarantine edition. It's stripped down. It's like Sound of Sanity Naked or Sound of Sanity, what do they call it?
That's a Beatles reference, by the way.
That is a Beatles reference, yes, very much. Very much a Beatles reference. Or what do they call it? Stripped down, like the famous live shows that certain artists will do.
Unplugged?
Unplugged. Yeah, this is like Sound of Sanity Unplugged. It's not literally unplugged because...
Neither are those shows.
Yeah, neither are those shows. But this is like that. This is like our version of that aesthetic. Because we want to keep getting Sound of Sanity to you during these times, but there's also the reality that we are in these times. And, I should introduce this. My name is Nathan Albertson, your humble and obedient host. That's Pastor Jacob Menzel right there.
That's me.
Hey, Jake.
Hey, Nathan.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Going well. We should give an update. This is the first time we've talked with our loyal listeners since Friday, I think. And on Friday, we said, by the way, Warhorn Media is going to die, maybe.
Yeah. We told listeners that we had about a $3,000 shortfall that we were anticipating going into salaries for May. So we're going to be able to keep the lights on in April, but we were on track to have to shut down in May. 2/3 of that money has come in thanks to the generous support of many of you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we need about $1,000 more to make it through May. And so if there are still some of you out there that are looking at things and feeling like you're in a good position to help us, we would appreciate it if you would help us. And I wish that we could tell you we've been working hard to strip things down to bare essentials, but we have always run.
Yeah, that's kind of
on bare essentials.
Kind of where we live, baby.
So it's not like we can, cut down. There's nothing to cut down on right now.
Right. As we said last time, I fired my pool boy. Jake canceled his cruise, which seemed like a spectacularly good idea.
Yeah. And Warhorn was funding both of those things directly, not through our salaries because, Nathan's got to have his pool.
No, that's
boy
my rider Warhorn will pay for my pool boy. It maintains Jake's yacht. Well, not anymore though.
Not anymore. Yeah. My yacht maintenance and
your cruise. Jake demands both cruise. Actually.
And Nathan's pool boy, we've tightened our belts along with everybody else and just gone ahead and sacrificed those.
Listen, the pool is collecting algae until this crisis is over. That's the Sound of Sanity.
You could probably go out there and take care of it yourself. You're stuck at home.
Jake, what am I? A commoner?
Please.
I've got important work to do. I can't be bothered with that. Okay, so I, of course it goes without saying, we appreciate everything and your family comes first, your church comes first, all that. We understand completely. Yeah. But man, we've been very grateful for people.
Very, very, very grateful for the response that we've had so far.
Yeah.
And just about $1,000 away, $1,100 actually away.
Mm-hmm.
So every little bit helps, guys. It's weird because you're looking at the people that we've talked to and some of our actual big givers are in the most difficult place financially right now when it comes to being able to support us because they're small business owners who are trying to take care of their employees while having their income cut. It may actually be that many hands could make for light work on this sort of thing for us. Anyhow, as Nathan said, we know times are tough for everybody and everybody's facing a lot of uncertainty, and it's okay that we're in that same boat. It really is.
I guess we should talk a little bit about the show because people may have noticed some interesting things happening to their feed.
Yeah.
You're going to be getting, first of all, you're going to continue to get normal Sound of Sanity, normal-ish episodes like the one we're doing right now, which are going to be a little bit stripped down. And
so long as we're able to keep making them.
So long as we're able to keep making them, it may, we'll see what God does. Now, the other thing, though, that we are going to also do until such time as we can't is the Chip and Lance show.
Yeah.
All it took was an international pandemic
to finally get you that kids show.
To finally get you your kids show with Chip and Lance.
This isn't the kids show that we envisioned by any stretch. But
no, and that may still come, Lord willing. But
yeah, I think it will eventually.
Right. This is an emergency kids show.
That's right. This is us saying, hey, we have this other programming lined up. We have these other episodes. None of them really feel like the kind of thing that the world needs right now, that our listeners need. But what might be nice is just a little bit of fun with Chip and Lance while you're at home. And for the kids, hopefully reinforcing the kinds of things that you've been talking to your kids about over the past week and a half and over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, they're fun. They're like 5 to 10 minutes long, and there's a little lesson in there, generally speaking.
And the lesson may be as simple as, this is why we wash our hands, and this is how we do it, which we know everybody's heard those lessons 1,000 times, but maybe it'll be fun and good reinforcement for it to come from Chip and Lance, and more spiritual lessons like what to do with our fear, and if we're afraid about this, or if we're sad about not seeing our, dealing with, fear, the fear that you feel and the sadness that you might feel, and kids being away from grandma, family, their friends at school or church. So hopefully we'll be able, and also just the tensions of, anger and frustration that come, living together tight in close quarters 24/7 with all kinds of weird pressures and not the normal pressure releases. Even if you're homeschooling and used to that lifestyle, or private Christian schooling, you hit the summer months and you've got the parks, and you've got the pool, and you've got play groups, and you've got all of these other places and things that you can do. Many of us are, even those outlets and those releases are being taken away, and the pressure cooker is tight. Hopefully this is a little bit of relief in and of itself, and a little bit of encouragement and help for everybody.
Yeah, and there might be it's possible there are some killer bee attacks and wolf fights and places where Lance tries to explain something to Chip and Chip misunderstands it in a fashion that might be comedic. I don't know.
I've never heard anything like that.
Maybe it'll just be dry and boring.
I ain't Badgers, Chip.
I ain't Badgers, Chip.
Is Lance going to get to say something like that?
I don't know. Will Lance get to say his patented catchphrase, I ain't Badgers, Chip? Which Jake has been asked to say that before, by the way, in case anyone was wondering. So
I've been at other churches in other contexts and had kids ask me to say that line in particular. So,
well, maybe we can.
Lance's one great catchphrase.
I think some catchphrases might come out of this. I don't know.
I hope so.
Abbott and Costello used to do Who's On First in just about every movie that they did. Maybe Chip and Lance will have to actually do the Badgers routine at some point in the Chip and Lance show. Anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're aiming to get them out couple a week, few a week, as often as we can, basically. So that's the state of the show. And now, the thing that you clicked for, me and Jake's, and by the way, I'm sorry that Ben isn't here. We're just scrambling. Like, honestly.
We're doing what we can when we can.
We're doing what we can when we can. That being said, let's talk through Jake and Nathan's patented 5 ways to not waste the quarantine. Oh, here comes the part where if this was not the stripped down, naked, unplugged version, you'd hear some music and all that kind of stuff. And I'd say, hey, everybody, welcome to 5 ways not to waste the quarantine. And yeah.
Well, that just happened.
We'd start talking about it. Number 1, these all have kind of Jordan Peterson-esque or terrible pun titles to them. Number 1, when you're out of the rut, now get on the road.
Yeah, so the idea here is maybe the good version of don't waste a good crisis.
Yeah.
You've been forced out of the way that your life has been going. You've been forced out of whatever ruts, whatever patterns, whatever disciplines of life that you've had, whether they've been good or bad. Now is a really great opportunity to respond to that in a way that's proactive and says, hey, since everybody's routine, everybody's schedule, everybody's disciplines, everybody's expectations are turned upside down, now is a great time to reevaluate everything that we've been doing and establish new disciplines and figure out what needs to change at home, what needs to change. Now's just a great time to reevaluate everything. What attitude adjustments need to happen with your kids, or what needs to change in your relationship with your wife? We get stuck at home now, and all of the little crutches that we were depending on to allow us to live together have been taken away, and we actually have to love each other and relate to each other in a way that honors God and honors one another. And that's a tough pressure cooker to live in, but it's a good discipline from God that is forcing us to figure out how to do life together in a way that, I don't know, it's kind of healthy, actually.
Bump, 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 devil's advocate alarm. Oh no, part of the show where somebody plays the devil. Jake, I'm just trying to survive. Like, I'm just hanging on for dear life. I'm okay, fine, if we're using the metaphor. I was driving in a rut. Well, I got jumped out of the rut, and now I'm swerving all over the place, and I'm trying not to hit trees, and you're like, find the best path forward. Well, yeah. I'm just trying not to crash.
Yeah, I understand that. And a lot of us were just trying not to crash at first. But when a situation like this happens, what we all have to do is we have to work to keep our heads in it and to find our heads as quickly as possible if they've been rolling around.
Right.
What we can't do is start running around like chickens with our head cut off. What we have to do is, as quickly as possible, establish new routines, establish new normal. And
what we're kind of arguing is, as long as you have to establish them all over again anyway, you might as well take the time to reevaluate of some things and kind of, I mean, even if it's just like, I think our family should get up at 8:30 instead of 8.
Yeah,
like this is actually, you guys are already dealing with the pain of all kinds of change. So why not just roll into it and kind of course you have to do that with wisdom and discretion and patience and blah, blah, blah. There's a million ways to nuance this.
Yeah. But you have to be proactive. If you're not proactive about these things, then you're just a leaf in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
a kite blowing in a hurricane, Mr. Bond.
A reference everyone will get.
Mr. White said that in the hit movie Spectre that nobody liked.
Yeah. So, and there are things that have needed to change undoubtedly in your home and in your life that you've just not taken the time to address, and you've had all of the busyness of life to avoid dealing with those things. Now God's taken those things away, and what you need to do is not find more ways to avoid the problems, but really accept this from the Lord and address it. And there are disciplines that have been good that you've established in your life up to this point that you can work to maintain throughout something like a quarantine, a stay at home, order from your state. And so I want to lead that into our next point, which is don't work in your pajamas. And what we mean by that is, hey, don't go to seed during this time. If you're going to take advantage of these opportunities, of this as an opportunity, you need to, at the very least, not let your good disciplines go to seed, go to waste. And so one great idea that I've seen out there is, hey, do you have a commute in the morning where you prepare yourself for work, but now you have to stay at home? Here's an idea. And do you have a routine, where you prepare yourself emotionally or whatever for your job, whether it's listening to music or you're on the road podcast or whatever? Get up at the same time, get dressed, go for a walk around the block with your earphones in, listen to your podcast, keep that routine alive. If it's part of do you listen to the Bible on the way to whatever it is, like keep those things in place because they're good routines that provide stability for your life. Get up, keep grooming yourself, keep taking those showers, keep putting on a fresh change of clothes,
Well, when a lot of things are in flux, those anchor points become more important. Like an anchor point, like the time that you get up actually helps anchor your entire being in a way that it actually doesn't when everything else is stable. You can afford to sleep in one day, but when nothing is stable,
you can't afford to sleep in every day.
Yeah, you need to actually be finding the places where you can give yourself some stability and some discipline and some self-control, because even doing a few things that don't matter, like, do you have to go for a walk and get into your work headspace? No, but doing something like that can give you the self-discipline to then actually do your work, to actually do the things.
Hey, I'm hitting my routine buttons. I'm hitting all the buttons that I've set up, or that have just been set up for me.
Right.
That tell me, hey, now it's time to go to work. Now it's time to sit down and actually get things done. And so there are a lot of little things, and I don't know what it is for you, but there are things like that you can do, and you should be doing those things so that you are disciplined and you're able to, in as much as you're able with kids at home and
Mm-hmm.
whatever that means. Different schools are doing different. Some schools are just off, and some schools are trying to do like an at-home online learning thing, like what my kids have just this morning begun doing, where it's like, I have 5 kids that are in this private Christian school, and they've all got their Zoom appointments throughout the day, and it's like, it's insane, and we're trying to figure that out. But it was really sweet, and I think really sweet for the kids, and something I ended up appreciating, seeing them light up as they got to see their classmates and even their teachers on Zoom, and just feel like, hey, yeah, we're all going through this together, and the teachers gave them space to clown around with it, which I thought was also really sweet.
Yeah,
and it wasn't this like over disciplined, intense, no, we've got to get back to school thing that I was afraid of. It was there was a lot of silliness and just like
clearing the air a little bit.
Clearing the air that I thought was really important and really wise for certain teachers to have done.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, whatever your situation, like, okay, these wrenches may keep coming. So you got to be adaptable and flexible, but you also have to figure out how to maintain, some stability and also ways to make it sweet. So I did the go for a walk this morning routine, but I took a kid with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even my idea. It was his. I was going to go for a walk and I was going to listen to an audiobook. And he's like, can I come? It's like, yeah, okay, let's try this. And it was really sweet. And I think now, Lord willing, I'm going to try to do that every day with a different kid.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, look, there's an opportunity that I wouldn't have otherwise had.
Right.
And so whatever new good patterns and habits, as we were talking earlier about, hey, don't waste a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
When you're out of the rut, get on the road. Don't work in your pajamas. What are the disciplines now that you're out of your routines? What are the disciplines you need to maintain? And what are the disciplines that you can be like, hey, I can put that in place now. I've been needing to do this.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do this? How do I seize on the fact that my routine's been busted up and therefore I need a new routine and I can evaluate that routine and I can make it what it should have been, or I can make it better than it was.
Right. For me, so much of this, and I realize I have it easier than probably a lot of our listeners because I don't have kids at this point in my life. But for me, so much of what Jake's talking about has to do with space and figuring out ways to assign space and to protect space and to maintain space and when to let space, when to be generous with space and when to these are the things that I have to negotiate with my wife. Like, I'm going to be working at home and here's the area that I'm going to be. And it's not that you can't interrupt me if there's an emergency. I don't want to be a jerk about it, but
I need you to treat this like my office.
Yeah, I need you to pretend not pretend, this is my office actually. And I need you to respect that in a way that maybe isn't as important when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. But it's like, now is not the time to talk to me, and it's not the time to be offended by that.
Yep.
Either. And those things are hard to negotiate, but they're worth it's worth
important.
Negotiating them proactively instead of just, yeah, honey, that's interesting. Cool story. And I wish she'd shut up so I could do the work that I have to get done. It's worth actually talking about it.
Absolutely. And that's especially true if you've got small kids at home. You have to be able to bend. Everybody's under more pressure. Dad being home is a good thing. Dad being able to step into discipline or whatever at certain times is important. Dad should be there. Dad should be ready to throw in more. Dad also needs his time to get his work done respected and protected. And yeah, it'll be different for everybody based on
this literal spatial reality that they live. Do you live in a tiny apartment? Do you live in a mansion? Do you have it at your own office? Do you?
Based on that, based on what it looks like for you to work at home, if you even can work at home, it's just every family is different. And I know I don't want to spend a lot of time on this episode retrotting ground that a lot of people have trod about, how do you be a stay-at-home mom? How do you be a work-from-home dad? There are lots of articles out there that are helpful about that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of what we're talking about is just, hey, take the bull by the horns here.
That's what I want to say, is just be proactive in talking it through and figuring it out. And be generous with each other, If you're the wife that is expecting your husband, because he's home, to be more available and there are ways in which he can't, then be understanding about that. But if you're the husband and, actually the kids do need a little discipline and you get called in at a time that you normally wouldn't, be generous about that, which kind of, I guess, brings us to point number 3, right, Jake?
Absolutely.
Point number 3, the awesomely, amazingly titled point, which is don't plod with the rod. Oh man, could there be a better way of expressing?
I have no idea what it means because I think a lot of people, at least in our circles, have come to think of plodding as a good thing.
Oh, like plot activity, like the Doug Wilson, like
Plodcast.
Plod,
like
you just plod along.
You keep steadily moving, long, slow obedience in the right direction.
So I guess you could do something that was like do plod with the rod, and it means like you just need to be consistently disciplining your kids. And but that's not what we're talking about.
Nope.
We're talking about something else. And Jake's about to tell you what that is.
Okay, so for many of you may feel a little late for this sort of thing. Maybe you did do this right away and you've reaped the benefits of it. Maybe you haven't and it's just time to throw in. But you have to not wait to establish and reestablish the discipline of your home whenever situations get turned upside down. Kids thrive on structure. They thrive on knowing what the boundaries are. And every time some things feel new and it's like everything goes out the window with them. Think about going on family vacation together. It's, oh, we're on vacation. We're in a new place. Everybody's running around like Kevin in Home Alone, right? Waving their arms like wild crazy men. And you have to establish discipline and order right away and make those expectations clear. Hey, it doesn't matter if we're going to grandma's house. It doesn't matter if we're going to the store. It doesn't matter if we're on vacation and we're in a hotel room or an Airbnb or a rental of some kind. It doesn't matter if that we're in the van for hours. These same rules apply. It doesn't matter if we're all stuck at home now. The rules still apply. And in fact, here are more rules. Or we're going to change things around a little bit here because, things are special. But boom, we're going to come out. We're going to establish a tone of discipline, structure, and order very strong, very soon out of the gate. So in these types of situations, it's really important that you are proactive, again, taking the bull by the horns, both in your discipline and in your affection towards your kids. So you want to discipline them early and often so they understand that the rules are still there, so that they feel safe, and so that you don't have to become a monster. Because what's going to happen if you don't establish discipline early and often is the kids are going to go from bad to worse, and you are going to be that much more inclined to lose it. And that's what you want to avoid. Well,
I used this example recently on an episode, but it comes to mind again. The teachers in high school in particular that I remember, there were like two kinds. There was the one there were the good teachers, and they would come in and they would come off as monsters the first day of class. They'd be like, sit down, shut up, everyone shut up. You will stand up when an adult, they'd be like over the top.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh no, I'm going to have to put up with this. Inevitably, that teacher knew the trick, which is get everybody's respect early, and then you can chillax and you can actually kind of just be the students' friends because they're all inclined, like they know you have discipline and they're inclined to just respect you. Put that against the bad teacher who comes in the first day of class. And
I want to be everybody's friend. Yay.
Right. And inevitably, that teacher would be a hated tyrant by the end because that teacher would feel impotent and overwhelmed, and their class, in fact, would be chaotic and hard to learn in.
And everything would be about her hurt feelings because she just wanted to be your friend at the beginning, and now she has to do all, now she's losing it all the time on you.
Right. The teachers that ended up yelling at us, the teachers that ended up being unfair, that ended up, sending people to the principal's office, whatever it was, those were those teachers. Whereas the teacher who just established discipline up front really didn't have to exercise that discipline hardly at all because it was just an established fact.
Yeah.
Like, you don't goof off in this teacher's class.
Yeah. So establish the discipline early so that the kids just feel safe. They know what the boundaries are. And I want to go with that and say, just as you're being proactive in your discipline, you need to be proactive in your affection towards your kids too. I decided this morning, because everybody was crazy with all this school stuff and emotional and uptight and nervous, you've got, these kids, they're 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, and I'm going to see my friends, but I'm not going to get to see, and what are the expectations, and if I don't, and is it going to be, and so one of the things that I just decided this morning was that everybody needed some hug time. And it sounds pretty dopey and silly, but it just felt like the right thing to do of, hey, everybody just needs to know it's okay and we can breathe, and let's just have a big hug and vent some emotional energy through a squeeze. I feel like those sorts of things, they can go a long way, especially at the start of a day, to remind you and everybody else, we have to live disciplined, orderly, obedient lives here in these difficult circumstances, and we need to love each other, and we do, actually. And setting those tones out of the gate, they're just important.
Which is why we are heartily recommending our great catchphrase, don't plod with the rod, or what's something that rhymes with rod that indicates affection. Hugs to the bod. Don't
nod on the rod would have been better.
Oh, yeah. Don't nod on the rod.
And don't be above the love.
Yep, there you go. Don't nod on the rod, and don't be above the love. You heard,
you heard it here first.
You heard it here first, folks. Now, our next one is specifically for dads, and it has the awesome catchphrase of "Don't go from dad to worse." Jake, would you care to explain "Don't go from dad to worse" to us?
Well, yeah. So if you're like me, dads, the craziness of being at home in close quarters with a lot of kids, and I'm not saying that this isn't also true for moms, but I feel like in some ways it's especially true for dads, because God gives this command, don't exasperate your children, specifically to fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that fathers, dads are in a special place of temptation, being exasperating to their kids right now.
Mm.
And here's what happens. We're in these tight places. We get irritated. We've not established, or we're going to establish discipline, but we're going to establish it like a tyrant. We're going to run around and just be sure nobody's going to bother us.
Mm.
Or we're not going to, and then we're going to explode all over everybody. And we're frustrated because we're at home. We're frustrated because of our work. We're frustrated and scared because of the financial circumstances surrounding us. Everything about the situation just builds up for a dad to the point where he is on the verge of losing it all the time. And the kids, that poor kid that gets underfoot at the wrong time, is going to catch it.
Mm-hmm.
So, dads, breathe. Be proactive about getting yourself into a chilled out headspace. If you can embrace that phrase, a chilled out headspace, and obey God. Don't exasperate your children. Be flexible. Understand they're under pressure too. Understand they don't know what to do with themselves. Understand it's just hard for a 7-year-old boy in a house with 3, 4, 5, however many siblings to contain himself, to not break something. And so breathe, relax, accept that this is part of it. And set a good example for living in love with one another and being compassionate and gracious with one another. And throw in on work that you wouldn't normally do because you're not there for it. One of the things that you need to be doing is being sure chores still get done around the house, right? Well, now everybody's at home, so let's reestablish order with our chores. And dad, find a way to throw in and set a good example. Show them what it is to do a job that, you don't like, you wouldn't normally have to do, but we're all in this situation together. So now dad gets to do some weird thing cheerfully that he wouldn't normally have to do. And show us what it's like to do it cheerfully and to throw in and be part of the team.
I'm sitting here thinking about my wife, and obviously I don't have kids, but I do have a wife. And obviously the first thing you said, Jake, the second thing you said, Jake, got it covered. I help with the dishes. I help with everything. I'm great. Just,
yeah, of course.
My wife is treated like a princess or
right.
a queen or whatever she's treated like. The first thing that you said, though, about not exasperating, man, I think just about every time I get harsh or angry or censorious or whatever with her, every time I'm mean, every time I have cruel words, it's almost always a function of, and this isn't an excuse, this is a confession. It's always a function. It always happens when I get insecure about something. Like, oh no, if I don't make sure that this issue is nipped in the bud, she'll never respect me. What am I going to do? If I don't make sure that this thing is, that she knows not to spend this money, then all our money will be gone and we'll starve to death. It's when I'm afraid of something, I lash out and get nasty. Yeah. And like, so this is the perfect time. Oh, you bought $20 extra worth of groceries because you thought that you saw the shelves were empty and you were scared and you wanted to stock up. Well, that's great, except for we might want that $20. I mean, it's like things like that.
Yeah.
That's things like that happen. It's easy for when I'm feeling tense about finances, about the home, about my job, about things like that. It's easy for that to translate into anger. If I don't take control of this situation, then it'll fly out of control. And the only way I can, because I don't trust God or have faith that he's caring for me, the only way I feel I can actually, and because I have zero belief in my own ability by God's grace to just handle things in a calm way and get them done, I just feel insecure and bad. It's like the only effective way of addressing the situation is to fly off the handle.
Yeah.
And
that is the response of impotence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not healthy, it's not good, and it's not accurate. You have a lot of potence, actually.
Right.
You have a lot of potency in your home. And if you want to lose it, you can act impotent and fly off the handle all the time, and you will eventually lose.
Hashtag self-fulfilling prophecy.
You'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, with dignity and grace, lead your home like a man who knows where he's going and actually has the best interest of everyone in mind, then your kids, they want to follow you. They want to obey you. They want to please you. And your wife does too, probably. And if she doesn't, just stay steady and faithful. All of this leads in, I think, to our fifth and final point.
Yes, abandon the spiral of doom.
Yeah, the spiral of doom, which is what I call it in premarital counseling, at least. And apparently there's a book out there that calls it something else, but a similar thing.
If anybody out there has read Love and Respect, he's got like the crazy cycle, get off the crazy cycle. And the crazy cycle is pretty similar to what Jake's about to describe, I think.
Yeah.
But Jake did not rip it off from the book Love and Respect.
I definitely didn't. I've never read that book, and I only first heard that was a thing in that book when Nathan was like, "Oh, you mean from Love and Respect?" And I was like, "What?"
But the concept, I think, is as old as marriage. So
the concept is as old as time.
Right.
It's a tale as old as time.
It goes back to at least Adam and Eve.
At least Adam and Eve, if not before then.
Mm-hmm. So the concept.
The concept is in Ephesians chapter 5. God gives husbands and wives commands, and those commands are based on what husbands and wives need to hear. Husbands are commanded to love their wives and to lay down their lives for them. And that's because husbands are not always inclined to love their wives, and because wives need to feel loved. And the Bible, at that same point, commands wives to honor and respect their husbands. And that's because both of these are because of big cosmic realities. But it's also because wives are not inclined to honor and respect their husbands, and because husbands need to feel respected. And the beautiful thing about marriage is that when it works together beautifully. When a wife feels loved and tenderly cared for, she tends to find it easier to be more respectful of her husband and to honor him. And the more a husband feels respected and honored by his wife, the more inclined he is to be tender with her. And so it can work together to create this beautiful thing where we're becoming more a better and better picture of Jesus in the church. We're reflecting the way that God is and the way that God made the world and the way that God saves us. But the opposite can also be true. And the fact is, the less respect the husband feels from his wife, the less inclined he is to be tender toward her and to love her. And the less she feels loved, the less inclined she is to be respectful to him. And that can become an inverted feedback loop, a spiral of doom that drives us apart from one another.
Well, the stupid thing is, in the situations like that, you're always waiting for, well, if Meredith would just finally get it in her head that she needs to respect me, then I could love her.
Exactly. So what we do is we make our obedience to God contingent on somebody else's obedience to God. And so it becomes this thing of, well, she's
like we're
not
playing chicken or something.
Yeah. She doesn't respect me. She's not being respectful to me. Forget it. I'm not going to be tender to her. I'm not going to She doesn't deserve it because she's not doing the things.
Right.
And then she feels the same way. And she says, well, I don't feel loved. I don't feel this tender affection I'm supposed to. So he doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve. Guess what? Here's the hard truth. Neither of you deserve it. Neither of you deserve it. God's command to you does not depend on somebody else's obedience to God's command to them. God does not say, husbands, love your wives if she honors and respects you. Instead, he says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. And so it's a command that is irrespective of how she responds to you. Husbands, love your wives, period. Love them as Christ loved the church. That's God's command to you. And so you have to break out of the rut. You have to be proactive. Same is true for you wives. It doesn't matter. God did not say, wives, honor, respect, submit to your husbands if. He said, do it. And so what we both have to do in these situations, especially the situations of escalating tension that some of us are finding ourselves in because we're at home with each other all the time, is we each have to break out of the rut, break the spiral, and realize God's commands to us are God's commands to us. And we have to take big steps toward one another. We have to be generous toward one another. And it is that generosity that I really want to push and encourage right now, because the fact is, everybody's under a lot of stress and tension and pressure right now. And we just have to be generous with one another. We have to be forgiving of one another. We have to confess our sins to one another. We have to be gracious to one another. And we have to be generous in our affection toward one another, in our displays of love and tenderness. And I mean that in every possible way. Now is the time for utmost generosity toward one another.
Can I just take a marker and say, just kind of underline what you just said? And I'm not going to say anything, but
way.
If people just want to read between the lines, this is a good place to read between the lines.
In every possible way.
Every possible way.
Now is a very good time.
So just like transcendent spiritual sort of ways.
In the most tangible of ways. Every possible way. Be generous toward one another. Be generous with your affection. Be generous with your forgiveness.
But I just also, this is a family show, so I'm going to leave some things between the lines here, but I think it's a good place. It's a good time to be tangible.
It's a good time to be tangible, yeah. Yeah, being tangible goes a long way for everybody.
It really does.
To relieve stress and tension, and to affirm one another that we're on the same team, on the same side, and we're in this together.
Well,
God made us
about
tangible creatures for a reason.
The memes about in 13 years there'll be quarantines. Those are memes for a reason.
Yeah, and good reason. And now's the time for good reason. God made us tangible creatures for a reason. And you ought to be hugging your kids in the morning and hugging your spouses at night.
There you go. Enough said about that, I guess. Anything else you want to say about quarantine tips or tricks, Jake? That's the 5, that's the listicle we came up with.
I don't think so. I mean, we're not going anywhere. We're trying not to.
No, we'll come back with more
so
thoughts.
We'll have more thoughts for everybody and encouragements. I don't think that we've said anything that most of our listeners haven't already thought of, but I think hearing it again and again and again is just it's like the Apostle Paul says, you know this stuff, but it's no trouble for me to write it over again, and it's good for you.
Oh, okay. Here, I forgot. I did have a devil's advocacy from earlier. Beep, beep, beep. Oh, no. This isn't really a devil. It's just a sad person with a question. Oh, no, Jake. I did nod with the rod, and now my house is chaotic.
It's never too late. It's never too late to step in and to, my wife and I jokingly refer to it, and I don't know, we probably picked this up from somebody else, but we jokingly refer to it as a reign of terror. Just, hey, we got to yank everybody back in line. Because the way that this tends to work is you run a really disciplined home for a while, and then everybody's happy and things are going good, and then mom and dad feel like, hey, we can relax our discipline here. And as you start to relax your discipline, things start to get a little bit more crazy and a little less happy, and you can find yourself just down the line real easily it's like driving a car, right? You don't hold the car wheel firmly, you are always making these minor corrections as the contours of the road change and are just trying to keep between the lines. Well, discipline's like that. And sometimes you find yourself drifting over into oncoming traffic or onto the shoulder because you fell asleep at the wheel. And it's time to yank it back onto the road and then get back to, the minor course corrections. And so if you found yourself driving on the shoulder and it's, it's okay to yank it back onto the road and to lock down for a little bit and to just say, and you can talk to your kids about it. If they're really young, they won't understand. But if they're older, you can just say, hey, listen, mom and dad have let things go that we shouldn't. That's been sin, actually. Sin against God and against you. We've not been loving you the way that we should. And so we're locking down on discipline here. And we're all going to snap too. This is as much about mom and dad recommitting ourselves to obey God as it is us requiring you to lock down and discipline yourself to obey God and us. So you can do that sort of thing. And you can be open about it. You can talk it through with kids. Kids can I'm not a fan of, you don't have to have this sort of high-minded, heavy-handed approach to these sorts of things. You can just talk about it with your kids because we all screw up. And a lot of the big changes that we have to make or adjustments that we have to make are because of our own sin and failure. So admit that out front. That can go a long way, especially the older that your kids get. So,
oh no, Father, you are capable of failure. Is that what your kids say when you?
Yeah, that's what they say. They're crushed every time.
Alas, that ever I was born. It
is shocking the degree to which your kids just sort of assume that you've got it together and that you're always in the right. But they also have those moments where they intuitively know, and it relieves so much tension when you just let the air out of, when you pop the balloon and say, yeah, you were wrong for what you did there, and I was wrong in how I responded. You don't want to always go around apologizing for your discipline because it's always mixed with sin. It always is. But dads, when you've gone overboard. And parents, when you've been too lax, or you should. And so, you can, just like you would apologize to a kid for losing it and going overboard in discipline, you can apologize for going wobbly on them, for going weak, for going loose, and correct. So, and if you've got a lifetime of zero discipline and you're just now looking at this like, crap, the chickens are coming home to roost, or whatever the
saying is.
The dumb saying would be, well, you've got a longer uphill battle. You can't just be like, well, I screwed up, but now you have to take a longer road. And this episode of this particular show is not the one that you need to be listening to.
Nope.
You need to go listen to some Then Comes What.
Yeah, or you can listen to season 2 of World We Made, which is all about fatherhood and lots of practical advice about these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Well, sounds like people have a lot of quarantunities, don't they, Jake?
I knew you would do it at some point. Yes, Nathan. All the quarantunities.
I wasn't going to miss my quarantunity to say quarantunity.
Aren't you proud of me that I actually did it?
Yeah, I was very happy. You're right. I should acknowledge that, Jake.
Yeah.
It's
not the kind of thing I would normally do. I would normally just look down my nose at you.
Nope, but you said it. Jake said...
I did. I'm getting down on the level with the...
the
plebe.
The plebe.
Let them eat cake.
Very well. So I had to let my yacht team go, and yeah, you might as well say quarantunities.
Might as well. I'm already living like a commoner. Might as well say quarantunities.
Hey, speaking under the yacht team, if you want to support us, warhornmedia.com/give, or any of our Patreons, really, but patreon.com/Sound of Sanity would be the one for this.
Yeah, our monthly deficit could really use some shoring up. We need that short-term burst of cash, but we also just need to...
Ultimately, if we could solve the monthly deficit, then...
Yeah, which, we're working on it. We're also hoping that some of that will resolve itself and some people will come back online here after this crisis is over, whenever that is.
We have high hopes for the future. God is good.
Yeah,
and
he's always cared for us and provided for us. So,
but just like Jake is honest with his children about things, we want to be, not that you're our children, but we just want to be honest about where we're at.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at. So, okay, we'll be back, I don't know, definitely on for another episode on our next regularly scheduled Tuesday, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're back before that with more thoughts.
Yep.
And in the meantime, you'll be getting another Chip and Lance episode. You got one yesterday, you'll get one tomorrow, and we're going to try and get them out as often as we possibly can. So you'll be getting hopefully at least a couple a week.
Yep.
So anything else to say, Jake?
I don't think so.
All right. Until next time.
Stay sane.